So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to another grilling, in inverted commas. It's never really grilling with me, is it? Hopefully light-hearted session on how to heal your relationships. Hello, my love. My love is in one of the corners of this screen. My husband, who's on the other side of the world at the moment. Today's topic, I kind of like, I'm beginning to tease you all with my titles now. I don't know if you've seen the name of the topic today. Victim or victor or the ... question mark. I like to tease. It's because I want to get you thinking, actually. I want to get you thinking of what it's like to be in the victim. We're going to take a little bit of a plunge into this area. We've talked about it already, but I want us to really notice today whether we do sometimes just sort of like slip into that occasionally in our relationships, or perhaps more often than occasionally. And I also want to bring awareness to the victor, the one that wins all the time or thinks he or she does, right? Do we go into that? We're going to describe it. We're going to share our truths on what we feel this really is. And perhaps then just be utterly truthful with ourselves and notice if occasionally we do this in our relationships. And then there's the secret V at the end, which I'm not going to divulge because I want to keep you on your toes until we get to key eye opener number 3. That way I can assure that you're engaged. Talking of which, I can't see you properly, so on go the glasses. Hello. Hi. So why this topic? Why this topic of victim or victor? Or something that's different that actually is so much nicer, to tell you the truth. And I'd like to take you there and show you what your options are. Because sometimes the ego thinks that there are only 2 options. It works in the dual world. So it's like either this or that. It's either black or white. It's either victim or victor. Yeah. And it doesn't sort of see its way out. It kind of doesn't really want to see the way out. But the heart does. The heart does. The heart yearns for its truth, actually, its true nature, to behave from its true nature. So this topic, I want to look into its sort of blood and guts details today, because it is something that arises in our relationships and that can reap total havoc. Yeah. Oftentimes we might find ourselves in the victim, and some of us a lot of the time in the victim, and other times we may find ourselves in the victor, perhaps occasionally, perhaps a lot of the time. And I want us to really just be really honest with ourselves today and see where we lie on, those scales that I often ask you to look at yourselves on for self-reflection. But we'll get to that in a moment. Let's have a look at key eye opener number 1. What is a victim? And I wonder if I can open up the chat to just hear some of your ideas of how you see the victim playing out in a relationship. Maybe you recognize it in yourself, and that's a good place to start, let's be honest. It's great to recognize, because then we've got something to deal with, right? Or if you perhaps recognize it in somebody else, and perhaps you can describe what it looks like, what kind of behavior that shows up as in a relationship. Who would like to stick their neck out and describe to me in their own words, in their own understanding, from their own experience, of course, what they understand the victim to be, that kind of behavior, or what kind of feelings go on for a victim? These are sort of labels, and I'm not bonkers on labels, as I always say, but they help us identify behaviors that we do sometimes play out, and they don't really get us anywhere. So let's just nip this now in the bud, or pluck the flower off the tree if it's blossomed. Hey, Baharak.
It's, for me, I think there's a degree to what people are a victim. Like, when, for me, a real victim is somebody that every time they bring it back to, like, if something joyful happens and they're just like, yeah, but I still got this other thing and it's all not so great, and keeps on coming back to that.
Yes, that's very accurate. Yes, quite negative, right?
Mm.
Sort of pessimistic view on things, even if things are actually kind of rosy. It's very difficult for the victim to see them as rosy because why? They're in pain, right? Let's face it. Yeah.
I think a lot, for my, I just feel like sometimes there generally are depressed people, and I understand that, and like I have time for that, and sometimes they are just thinking about their current wounds, and I understand that. But when it's like, less that they're sad, but like they need to come back to their identity. It's their identity each time. My identity is this, and I'm, you know, yeah, but it's not all great. It's not great, is it? And well, my life is just beat, and I've realized who those people are, and
Yes.
it's like I'm starting to see there's the difference between depressed and somebody who keeps on trying to pull me into some energy that I don't want to be in.
Negativity or something. Yes, you're actually absolutely right. And I love your word identity because it is a kind of identity that sometimes without us even knowing, we create, right? And then suddenly, sometimes we don't even know we're in it. Yeah, because it sort of creeps up on us subconsciously from our wounds. It's behavior from our wounds, as you rightly say. But it can be deeply damaging in a relationship. It's a huge block to true love, which is why we're addressing this today. Thanks, Baharak. That's lovely. Yes, it's an identity. It's not who we really are. And this is where I want to take you, right? Thank you, my love. Anybody else? Would anybody else like to share their idea of what a victim is or how a victim behaves? And we're not condemning these, let's call them identities for today, because I quite like that. We're not condemning these identities. What we're doing is recognizing them. Let's not go to the condemnation anymore, because I think, and I hope that we're over that. Judgment won't get us anywhere either. But recognition and awareness, yes. Yeah, and then we deal with it, right? Who else has some ideas on what a victim is?
I was trying to remember the time that I played victim. That was quite early on when when I basically booted my ex out. So, and I recognised that at the time there was a lot of blaming. I was constantly blaming. I felt a little bit helpless, a lot of
Yes,
resentment,
those are
a lot of
key words,
loathing,
absolutely.
and it was just like it was a broken record. And at the time, I just wanted to vent, vent, vent. And every person I saw, I didn't see at the time. I took every opportunity to voice myself, and it wasn't the right thing to do. To be fair, I was just trying to offload.
Yeah,
And I see that I can recognize that even more so with one of my friends who's been going through the same stuff for the last couple of years. But I didn't see her as from a victim point of view. I knew that there was a lot of trauma. I knew that she basically kept going back to that place. It's the same story. Every time I saw her, it was the same story. And I'm saying to her, you need to make this, you need to take action, make some, valid decisions and choices to basically get a different outcome. And it wasn't so much she wasn't willing to do it. She was falling on deaf ears. It was the same thing over and over again. Every time I saw, popped in for a cup of coffee, same, same, same. And to the extent where it's not as if I've detached myself because I see that it's not so much I'm not getting anywhere, but she's quite a negative person and I can't be that energy for her.
yeah,
I've got to protect my energy. So I see how I was, but I was able to come out of that quite quick, whereas other people it takes a bit longer.
yes. Yes, you're describing actually, funnily enough, Yin Chan, a similar experience that I had this morning actually. I was in touch with an old friend who I haven't been in touch with for literally decades, except for the odd sort of message on Facebook. And he has cancer at the moment and has been told it's terminal. And he shared that message with me this morning. I was like, oh my God. I said, can we talk? And I wanted to offer him a soul reading or something and maybe to see if I could help. And as we talked, I could see the old patterns. I was reminded of all these old patterns, and there's very strong victim energy there. And a bit like your friend, I could see that it was very difficult to even address and just even approach it, actually, because sometimes there's just so much identification, as Baharak said earlier, and also with the pain of it, yeah, that there's an inability to let go. And accompanied with that, sometimes there's a sort of righteousness. I have a right to be like this, but it's all unconscious behavior. And so I've left it all open to see if he's willing to maybe have a soul reading, and let's see what the soul reading says. But yes, I could see that a lot, yeah. And I myself have to admit that I was the classic victim. As you know, we've talked about this before, and I'm not going to go into all the gory details of how that played out, but it's a horrible place to be because you are so raw and in so much pain, and you just sort of carry that pain around everywhere you go and into all of the relationships that you're in, and of course especially the relationships with your nearest and dearest. And you know, Terry has seen me in this as well, but I hope you'd agree that I'm a bit better 11 years later. But what's the verdict, honey? I'd just like to get some feedback. You're gonna have to lie anyway, because I'm teaching this now, so I've got to come across as, you know, over it.
No. Well, for anybody who's never known Rosalind, she's come a long way, really a long way. In 11 years, I've seen the change, and it's tremendous, absolutely tremendous. So I've got something to share as well, if I may. I think the victim to me is somebody who believes that life happens to them. Because
you should just be holding these things, because that's one of the things I was going to share. Are we too joined at the hip, I wonder?
Yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Yes. Yep. I was going to open it up, and yes, exactly. Somebody who feels like life is happening to them. Life is happening to me. Yes. Go on, my love.
No, that's all I wanted to say.
Yes, yes. Well, I shall pick up from there, sweetie, and that's my first point. In terms of the victim behavior and the victim mindset, it's one, and I just want you, as I'm talking about it, to just reflect on whether, be totally open and honest with yourself, whether there are times when this is where you go. And I'm going to put my hand up right now and say, yesterday, I totally went into the victim. Even though I'm teaching it today, it's probably perfect, wasn't it? That I was just totally in the victim. I just went into anger and I was raging, and I felt like all this stuff was happening to me. Yeah. The victim mindset is one where you feel on the receiving end of stuff in your life, and your lenses are negative. So it's going to be on the receiving end of negative stuff. Yeah. Even when something nice, Baharak, like he was saying, is happening, I don't see it that way. And there's a lot of people out there like this, and I am occasionally in this mindset. Yes, Baharak.
It's going to sound totally weird, and I probably shouldn't have it recorded, but I had a lot of things happen to me before I was even 7, like a lot. Yeah. Like my earliest memory was being in a house fire with flames all around me and my mum rescuing me. A few other things happened, which are actually far worse. And I've had another incident I can talk about, which is, seeing a boy in my class run over and killed. And just even, I still to this day have PTSD for a few things, but I definitely still hear his mum wailing, and it's quite an eerie sound, and it sticks with you.
Yes,
and
yes.
You know, when Terry was like saying, things happen to you, so you see it as a victim, it triggered like a thought in me, which is kind of weird, but a lot of stuff that happened to me, even my parents didn't know, right? And so a lot of it was like I didn't have anywhere to turn to, had myself. And it didn't really start hitting me hard until I was 13. But at that age of like until 7 or until 13, until 12 or something, the only way I felt I could survive is if I told myself that I was some kind of prophet, and that like it's so dumb. I used to say that, like, you know, that I was here for a reason, and that like to teach other people, to help other people, and these things happened to me so I could understand it to help others. But in my head as a child, it wasn't out of ego. I just told myself I was a prophet. Like, I was not really understanding what that word meant anyway, right? It wasn't an ego boost. It was just literally, I just didn't know what it meant. Later, that evolved when I understood what that word meant. But I did believe life happened to me, but it didn't put me in a state of victimhood. It put me in a state of maybe a little bit like it's for a reason or for a greater reason. Is that maybe egotistical? I don't know, but it got me through those years to survive, to live, to
It's a survival mechanism.
yeah.
Mechanism. And there may be some truth in it, sweetie. So I would be very careful when you condemn it as dumb. I'm just quoting
Yeah,
you.
but the profit thing was done to me the wrong term. But then it wasn't dumb. Yeah, it was limited knowledge kind of point. But
Yes.
I'm just saying that you know, I hear that term quite often. Life happens to you, but it actually happens for you. But I guess that's something kind of maybe winning the argument. No, but I did believe life was happening to me, and I kept thinking, why are all these things happening to me? They make no sense, not at all. Like there's too many things, because I know that like accidentally I've told people, and they're like, what, that didn't happen to you, and then they kind of shame me, like as if that didn't, you know, I didn't go through all that. And then it didn't even stop there. Like too many weird things have happened to me in my life. Like I don't have all this conversation and all these ideas from nowhere, because I've just honestly I've really seen a lot, but I'm sure many people have seen a lot. But I know significantly until 7 I saw way more than I should have done. So
Well, we'll come to the end. When we come to the end of this, I hope, sweetie, that what I'm going to share will just help you just perhaps see it with some clarity and just greater ease. Yeah. I need a pen. Just give me 2 seconds, because you said something that I just want to add to my.
But
I just want to add something.
definitely don't like weep over it or get sad over it. It's just maybe a little bit disassociated from it. But I as soon as I was able to, without my parents even knowing, I organised with my doctor as a young 16-year-old, 15-year-old to see therapists in secret after school. So, and it didn't stop. I saw like 4 therapists without anyone knowing, because I never let it. If we move, because my parents would just move and not, you know, and I didn't have a choice in matter. So I made sure wherever I went, I found a way of getting a therapist, and they never even knew. They never even knew. So, but it was a way to keep myself sane.
Yes. Well, I hope it's helped, sweetie. And let's move on. It's incredible, and you are walking an incredible path, Baharak, just like all of us. We're all walking incredible paths. And later on, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about key opener number 3. I'm dying to get there to sort of hopefully see if we can just sort of ease this a little bit for you and yeah, just shed some light there. So I'm going to take the plunge into, well, picking up from what Terry said, this idea that the victim has of life just happens to me. I'm just on the receiving end of this. And like you said, Yen Chan, helplessness. There's nothing I can do about this. It's like powerlessness. We talked a bit about this in the independent, dependent, or interdependence session we had a few weeks ago. But I'm taking the plunge more deeply now into the nitty-gritty of this kind of behavior. Poor me. Why me? Yeah. These are the questions and the statements that the victim's kind of like has about him or herself. Now, I'm not here to berate this or judge it. So please, I'm going to sort of say that probably repeatedly throughout the session, because it's so important not to judge behaviors. They have a very valid place from which they come, which we all can know, I think, by this stage, is pain. The point is, we don't want to behave from pain. We want to behave from somewhere else, right? This is not fair. This isn't fair. This shouldn't be happening to me. It's not fair. That's the kind of mindset that a victim behavior can have. Why does this always happen to me? These kind of sort of like thoughts and beliefs, they're really beliefs, actually are running subconsciously in a kind of loop in the victim mind. I can't help myself. I can't get out of this. This is just helpless. It's futile. I give up, but in the negative sense. So it manifests in ways in relationships that I want to just sort of have a quick look at. And I wonder whether you can see if at any point in your relationships with your nearest and dearest, and you can choose maybe 1 or 2 relationships, don't spread it too thinly. You can do this analysis for other ones outside of the call, but perhaps choose 1 or 2 relationships where you see yourself saying things like, I can't change this. I'm doomed. You know, this is just going to be the way it is, and there's nothing I can do about this. Yeah, that sort of helpless, powerlessness kind of attitude. Yeah. On occasion, I can see some messages coming through say, oh yes, we do, don't we? We do. And I felt a bit like this yesterday when I went into my rage and lost the plot. And it happens, but with awareness, you know, it's going to be fewer and fewer. I haven't lost the plot like I did yesterday for a long, long time. So I'm glad to say that it's less and less often that it happens, but yesterday was fairly full on. But, you know, I healed it as quickly as I could, but I was in pain for a while. Sometimes there's a sort of isolation. The victim just sort of removes themselves, and sometimes it's energetic, but it also can be that they spend time, or you, if this is you, if I'm describing you, you know, in a room away, you know, because you just can't face it. Yeah, you're sort of, and there's nothing wrong with isolation for a while, but from a positive place of, from a positive point of view, from a point of view of, okay, I'm going to address this, right? Rather than shutting yourself out and shutting others out. Yeah. So that can happen in the victim mentality. And as we mentioned earlier on, blame. I'm the victim, you're the perpetrator. Judgment and blame can go straight out from the victim to the other. So if you find yourselves ever sort of blaming someone else for your pain, and I didn't sort of speak these words yesterday, but I did go there. I did speak them. I lost the plot with my dad. Because I just felt like I was caught and sucked into this trap that I felt like I've been in for, you know, most of my life. And although I'm healing masses and we've come a long way and our relationship is much, much better and sweeter, yesterday I just plunged into it. And I felt like the victim. I was like, oh, he's so this, he's so that, point the finger, blame, 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 and judgment. So that is a classic behavior that the victim can demonstrate. Yeah. Feelings of being out of control. I'm out of control. I'm helpless. I can't do anything about this. Everything is out of control. It's like you're in total chaos and you're helpless about returning things to order of some kind. And repeating patterns. This happens again and again and again because that mentality of helplessness is still there. The victim can sometimes have huge fears of speaking up and setting their boundaries, these sort of things. And sometimes I do. Yesterday, I didn't do it at all well. I shouted at my dad. I don't know whether that's progress. I never even used to dare even whisper anything. And yesterday it was, and of course, it didn't go down well and everybody lost the plot. So that's not really healthy speaking up or healthy setting of my boundaries. There is another way. There is another way. And we've talked a lot about the other way, but I want to address it specifically with regards the victim and the victor. So the victim will be frightened of speaking up for themselves. Fear of more harm, fear of losing the person that they're speaking up to, perhaps. Yeah, all kinds of fears underlying. They may be unwilling or unable to resolve the problem. And this is a really important point. Unwilling or unable, and often these two things go together. Yeah, if I'm unable to or unwilling, it's probably because I'm unable and vice versa. Yeah, because we're caught up in this mindset. It's a very negative tunnel vision mindset. But recognizing those little behaviors, if we do go into them, are very healthy. It's a very healthy thing to do because then we can get our teeth into it and go, oh, you know what? Yesterday I went into the victim. That wasn't so good. Things were quickly resolved. And today's a new day. And I know that next time that happens, I won't react that way. Not because I'm forcing myself not to react that way, but because I will have healed the pain. around it. So I'd like to invite you, if I may, to grab a piece of blank paper and a pen if you haven't already got one there. And if you haven't already started to do this, to be truly open and honest with yourself and maybe start a list, you can finish it later on, of things that you think and you do. Remember the thinking as well, the things that you believe about yourself or about another or about your relationship or about life, yeah, and also things that you do, ways that you behave that might reflect the victim mindset. For example, me, yesterday, I can totally put on my list blame and judgment of my dad. I totally sent him some horrible energy yesterday because I felt hooked into his control and manipulation. And I went plunging into my pain. And I was like, you know, and I didn't say anything to him, but I felt it. And then I said it to my mum, you know, I was like, God, he's so this, he's so that, you know. But where did I get us? Nowhere. I didn't move towards love. I moved away from love. I did myself and my relationship with my dad and possibly him and everybody involved around us more damage. So this is a huge expense to pay, which is why it's so important to look at it. So on my list, first thing that goes down is, you know, still sort of like feelings of being out of control. I felt out of control yesterday and controlled. And from that stemmed the blame and the judgment and the anger. So we were off for a walk and I just marched up the hill with all my anger and then tried to sort of release it as I went. And I was also being triggered by my daughter, who was in her own sort of rather negative space as well. She was actually in the victim space as well yesterday. So there was a whole lot of victim stuff going on. It was an interesting walk. We actually got lost. We eventually found our way home. It was a very long walk. We ended up far from where we were intending to go, which is cool, but it was a long walk. But it gave me time to come out of it. So by the time we were actually on top of the brow of the hill, we were feeling a lot better, actually. So just start off your list. Full moon mania, Yen Chan saying, yes, I blame it on the moon. Victim behavior to blame it on the moon. I mean, I know you're joking and everything, but, you know, if I was to be serious about, oh God, it's the moon, it's the moon's doing, you know, reaping havoc with my hormones, my chemistry, you know, I'm not really taking responsibility, right? The victim doesn't want to take responsibility. But we can't really blame it on the moon. The moon's going to come around every month. If I go into hell every month, then I'm going to be in hell regularly. So I got to detach from the moon and look at this in the eye. So have a little think about the things that we've already said so far and where it is in your relationship. Choose one or maybe two at the moment where you do actually display this, where you feel just helpless, and perhaps put alongside it what it looks like. Baharat's got all kinds of grimaces going on your face. It's not a pretty picture. Today it's blood and guts, right? We'll get to the pretty picture in a minute. I can't wait. And I have to keep an eye on the time, by the way, because our clocks have gone forward. I'm going to have an alarm clock going off at 5 minutes past 3 because I've got to pick my daughter up from school at 3:30. So I don't want to get lost in all sorts of lovely conversations that I want to have with you, but we'll keep it succinct, to the point. Bang, bang, bang. Item 1, item 2, item 3. This is how I behave as a victim. Maybe have a look at why later on outside the call. Why am I being like this? Or maybe I just want to feel the pain around it. Notice it when it next surfaces. And just remove yourself from the picture if you can, if you feel the heart's truth to just heal it and come into a different space. There is a third option. It doesn't have to be just one or two options like the ego thinks. Who's got something on their list that they are willing to share? I did. You don't have to share. Who's got something on their list? Hands up if they've got something on their list. Terry, you're not that much of a saint. You've got to have something on your list. Baharak has. You just have to, you don't need to share what it is. You can just show me your hand if you've got something on your list. Yen Chan's remaining very quiet. Yeah, Baharak's, you've got more than one item on your list, Baharak. Yes. As you reflect and as you bring awareness, you'll probably find that a lot of the time we do. Yen Chan's list is blank. Interesting, interesting. As we analyze, and I don't like to analyze too much, but as we bring awareness to these things, you may find that there are moments when, you just feel a bit helpless and stuff. And it's okay for a moment, but not to keep continually behaving from it, because you're creating a pattern that's not resolving anything. So let's look at the opposite. It's kind of like an opposite, isn't it? Key eye opener number 2 is, let's look at the other side of the coin. Baharak saying that she's using humor. What's your main one then? You're saying you're using humor. Your main point.
I say it in humor, but like, it's kind of victim thing. I always say I'm always jinxed with the ones that, like, it's really hard for me to say I love you, and once I say it back, then I'm jinxed because the spell comes about. Like, I think I'm jinxed.
Yes.
It always goes wrong once I say I love you back. Always.
Those always goes wrong kind of comments. If you catch yourself there you are. Yeah, I would say that that's a victim kind of behavior. Maybe look a little bit deeper, or just feel into it, sweetie. Have a look at these items on your list outside of this call and just feel into them. Just drop your focus into these behaviors, these feelings, and just be with them. Deep breath, let them go. You know how to do this now, yeah? So the opposite of victimhood is the kind of victor behavior, yeah. Sometimes people use the word abuser and victim. I don't like to go too much into the abuser, because there is that, of course, there is abuse in the victor. There is stepping over the boundaries and, not respecting things. But the victor, who would like to throw out a few ideas on how they see the victor, Yen Chan? Wink, wink. She's got nothing on her victim list. So she must be in the victor. Or you needn't be on this call. You're in PI.
I know what it's like to be on both ends, but I'm probably more in the victor than I am in the victim. I think that's,
Yes, I have a sense of that. We can't hear you very well, sweetie. I don't know why. There's huge feedback.
Oh, sorry. So Victor, I better start writing my list then.
Yes, you get your pen out now, right? If there's nothing in the victim, yes, maybe you've been there, you've had that awareness, right? And you know what it's like. And so sometimes, yes, we switch into the victor. Now, we may find that we play both of these out in a relationship. We may be on these sort of sliding scales of a little bit of both. But ideally, we want to come right out of this into a much nicer place. So, Yen Chan, are you well placed to share a little bit what that sort of victor kind of behavior and mindset looks like?
I would say strong, clear, decisive, standing my ground, making myself heard, being visible, being present. Yeah.
Those all sound like very positive things. I'm looking for the things that can actually, because those sound very positive, and coming from you, I feel like they are, yeah. But is there a place perhaps where that strong, let's say, can be a little bit sort of overpowering or a bit controlling strong maybe, or strong because I have to be? Is there a sort of something like that that kind of goes on sometimes? Or is it just real, you know what, I'm just super strong? Because there's a difference, and one of them is the victor behavior and one of them isn't at all. Which one is it?
I think, okay, I'll give you one example. I don't know if it's the right thing at the moment, but same if I'm with somebody who's, just talking about the same, like I said, that person who's talking about the same thing, like a broken record or whatever else, and it's almost as if like because I know that I'm able to protect myself and I'm able to change the story and whatever else until she flips back to it. It's like, that little barrier to say, look, enough is enough now, in the nicest possible way, and instead of me telling them to just be quiet and just, you know, change the record, it's just my way of saying, look, I'm here, I'm present, I'm listening to you, I'm supporting you. However, you know, don't keep asking me for advice when you're doing the same thing. So I kind of try to show that I'm there. That's not the answer.
Does that feel healthy? Does it feel healthy? Does it feel that there's a sort of expansion inside you when you do that?
No, not
Oh.
really. It sounds awful. You know what it is? I think, you know, everybody wants to support their friend. Everybody wants them to do better. Ultimately, it's down to them. And if they choose not to, but then you see that over time. I didn't realize at the time, you know, because it'd gone on for so long. And my presence was basically for her to, she was coming out of depression. And she
Right.
even turned around and said to me, like, you know, if it wasn't for you supporting me, I wouldn't be able to recognize certain things. I wouldn't be able to. So, you know, I took it as a compliment. It wasn't a compliment that I was looking for. But she obviously didn't have that support. It was even trying to get her out of the house, even getting her to believe in herself, do, you know, different things, go shopping. You know what I mean? To stop her body shaming herself and stuff like that. You know. However, it was just, you know, towards the end, it was the same thing over and over again, and it just stopped me from doing what I want to do in terms of time, in terms of
Yeah.
you know,
Which
she
isn't
just needed to, I
necessarily
think.
a bad thing. It isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we do have to set boundaries with
Mm,
with our friends. I had to this morning because there was sort of like a loop that I could see this friend going into. I could just see all those patterns, and I was coming up to this call and wanted to center myself, and I had to sort of stop and say, you know, to this person who's got cancer, terminal cancer, who's on morphine, you know, I'm sorry, I've got to end the call right now because I've got a class. And but it was also, you know, I could see that there was that negative attitude that was just looping and looping and looping, and then the victim attitude, yeah. So let's hopefully we'll come a little bit clearer as to what this is. But perhaps those feelings, Yen Chan, of um, ill feelings, or feelings of a slight sense of guilt, you know, that you should be, you know, doing what society expects, or whoever expects, or you expect of yourself, to be there for a friend who's clearly depressed. But actually, you know, it's eating, sometimes it eats away at us. So we do have to sort of, you know, distance ourselves a little bit in whichever way, maybe just have phone calls or whatever it is, yeah. And if there is a sense of discomfort there, perhaps just heal it and let it go and see where you're at after that, yeah. I'd just like to share some of my ideas on what I feel a victor is and what I'm getting at here. I'm getting at somebody who is in control. I'm in control. I got this. No matter what, rain or shine, I got this. I'm so powerful, I got this. But it's a sort of slightly bullish got it. You can kind of feel the difference between somebody who's really, you know, got it and okay, and, you know, okay with whatever's happening, and somebody who's sort of got this sort of strong front on. A lot of the time, even in the deportment, in the way they hold themselves, you can see it. Even in their anatomy, if it's year-long behavior like this, their anatomy changes, yeah. I can see people whose chins have strengthened so much and whose chests are like barrel chested. Yeah. Yeah. This is actually behavior. I've got this. Even though inside, underneath, I don't feel like I have it all. Yeah. So actually, the victor and the victim behave from the same place, but in two very different ways. They're actually manifestations of the same. They're manifestations of fear, pain, unresolved wounds, unhealed wounds. Yeah. But they can behave in very different ways. Yeah. And one, of course, feels stronger than the other. Yeah. But neither of them really bring intimacy and true love into a relationship, because they're kind of like masquerades. They're not who we really are. Yeah. Sometimes the victor sort of errs a little bit on the narcissist. You know, it's all about me. I can do this no matter what. And I'm going to prove that I can, to sort of shine more brightly because it's all about me. There's sometimes that kind of behavior in that victor mindset. I have the power over you. I have the power. It reminds me of that song, I have the power, which I love and dance like a nutcase to in the day. It's like that. Yeah. I have the power is actually the intonation. I have the power, not you. I'm in control over you. Yeah. I know people like this. I've grown up with them. I'm sure it resonates, right? Yeah. How to be in a loving relationship with this. And also what happens is we become like this as well. Yeah. And so this is really important to look at. I can have it my way. I'm going to have it my way or the highway. It's going to be my way. My decisions prevail. I am right. Yeah, this is very much the victor behavior. Anybody recognizing this in their own? I know that I do this. I do this to my daughter, to my parents as well, to my husband, less and less. I don't need any help. I don't need you. I don't need you. I can do this on my own. I'm good. I'm good to go. I got this. Yeah, this kind of behavior. It's a bit like what we were talking about some sessions ago, the independent mindset. I don't need anybody or anything. I got this. Yeah, but it's very shut down as well. It's very shut down, but it comes across as like, he's really got this. This guy's powerful. This girl's powerful, but are they really? Is this a masquerade? And usually we can kind of tell, especially when it's our own behavior, because we're feeling underneath it all. We're feeling completely maybe out of control. Yeah, maybe there's a victim underneath all of that. Yeah, or lots of pain and fear. Sometimes the victor can be somebody who sort of rescues others. Oh, I can solve your problems. I can fix it. Yeah, the rescuer is a lot of the time the victor, yeah, the one that's got it, not just for themselves, but for others as well. So how does this play out in relationships? Things like, you must do as I say. You must do it my way. Yeah? It's my way, it's the right way. This is it. There is no other way. It's all about me and nothing about you. This is tantamount to abuse on many levels, and it can manifest in many different ways. How many of us behave like this? I do sometimes with my daughter. I make my pain and fear unconsciously, I don't mean to, more important than her freedom. Does anybody resonate with this? Hands up if you resonate. Yeah. Does anybody make themselves more important than the other person's? Yes, we do, right? Yeah. Yeah. So this actually just distances us. It's just like putting blocks up, one after the other, one after the other, when all we want to do and what we're trying to do is remove the blocks. Yeah. Your opinion doesn't count. You need my help, actually. Sometimes the victor is so victorious that the person they're in a relationship with becomes such a victim that the beliefs are so strong that they play themselves out as real. And that victim comes to need the victor so much. And guess what? The victor needs the victim to need him or her. You need me. Underneath that is, I need you to need me. And underneath that, there's a whole bunch of fears of maybe rejection or abandonment, all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. I know how to help you better than you know how to help yourself. I know this kind of behavior very well. You're not the boss. What's this? My daughter says the same. Yes, Yen Chan is sharing that her son says, you're not the boss of me. And Yen Chan's replies, I am till you're 18. Dangerous zone here, isn't it? Yeah, we can feel innately in our own selves, and I do the same to my daughter. She says, you're not me, mummy. How do you know how I'm feeling the cold or the heat or whatever it is? Yeah, they're trying to get us out of their space because the victor has a tendency to completely enter into the other person's space. They don't really have a tendency to respect boundaries. In fact, don't. They're in your space. And so the children or whoever it is that we're in a relationship are trying to fight us out. And that's why we end up in fights, because we're just fighting out the energy. Their energy is in my energy and I don't want it. That's why they shut the door on us sometimes or isolate themselves. Yeah. God forbid they go into the victim, but we are responsible sometimes for them going into the victim. The victor can push the other into the victim. That's the danger. And we don't want our children or, our children to grow up thinking that, negatively and that they're up against this in life. We want them to be free. And there is another way. So I'd like you to write a new list, just as you did for the victim behavior and the victim mindset. Write a new list for the victor behavior, admitting openly to yourself, being totally honest with yourself. Where do I behave like a victor in my relationships? Choose one or two people, not more than that for now. You can do the others later. Remember the stuff that we did yesterday that we put outside of the pot, not yesterday, last week, sorry, that we put outside of our pot, the stuff that we don't want to put in our relationships. It's going to look much like that, but more detailed. Yeah, because we're looking at it closely now, what it looks like. It's the stuff that we don't want to put into our relationships. It's the stuff that goes outside the pot of our relationships. It needs to be recognized. Oh yes, you know what? I do go into the victim sometimes, like I did yesterday. Oh yes, you know what? I do sometimes go into the victim. I personally, I slide into both at times. Yeah. Some people will be in the victim all the time, and others may be in the victor all the time. My dad, he's in the victor all the time. All the time. Such a strong sort of energy of victor that it can't even contemplate going into the victim. It just doesn't go there. Because I got this. And I got it for all of you. My mum, perhaps not all the time, but a lot of the time, she's in the victim. In anger around something that's happened and unable to find an equal grounding with my dad. I don't like to say this, but they love each other very much, but there are a lot of issues that haven't yet been addressed, that may never get addressed. Doesn't mean to say that it's, instead of love, they have their love, but it doesn't often get expressed, and that's a shame, right? There's a lot of distance between them. I'm on the other side of the world from my husband, and geographically speaking, there's distance. But there's a lot less separation between me and my husband now than there was when we were under the same roof, when I was a lot of the time the victor, wasn't I, darling? In the more recent years, I started out in our marriage as kind of like victim-y and very dependent, and I moved into the victor, trying to sort of boss everybody around and control things and, even make you feel certain things. That was like quite bad. Oops. And now I can't do it because I'm on the other side of the world. Drat. No, I feel better. I don't feel the need because I've healed so much of my pain, because I've healed and I'm still healing, and I will continue to heal until there is none left, until I'm free of it all. I don't have to control so much. My husband's much freer, and so am I as a result in the relationship. So just start off those lists of victor mindset and victor behavior. I've described it in some detail. Of course, there's other ways that it manifests, and see if you can recognize that in yourself. And you may or may not display it at all, but these things are good to recognize. And when they next pop up in your relationships, okay, I'm being super controlling here, or, this poor loved one just doesn't have a choice right now. What am I doing here? What am I doing? Yeah, so step back. And my next page here, before I go on to key eye opener number 3, is, I'm going to show it to you. There we are. Don't beat yourself up about these behaviors. Really important, because underlying them is pain and fear. And it's really important to go, oh God, I've gone into the control freak. And just sort of, it's very easy to do that. We get even angrier with ourselves when, we don't realize that we're beating ourselves up. That doesn't help. What we want to do is just quite simply heal the pain. So when you see yourself moving into those kind of moments with a loved one, Either remove yourself from the space if it's appropriate, or just bring awareness, have a glass of wine. No, I'm kidding. Well, why not? Whatever your heart's truth is, but just keep letting it go. Notice where it's coming from. Notice the fear that's underlying this behavior. Just keep letting it go. I've been doing this kind of technique for 2.5 years now. And I'm a new person. I'm so much better and so much more able to hold a healthy, happy, loving relationship today than I was just 6 months ago or a year ago. We have moments when we'll make mistakes, of course, like I did yesterday, yeah, or even this morning with my daughter, where I was still sort of freaking out about what she was wearing to school, like shirt sleeves, still only 10 degrees here. But, bit by bit, yeah. So don't beat yourselves up about it. This is a process, and the likelihood is that you may have been behaving from either the victim or the victor mindset for years and years and years from childhood. So it's really important not to punish ourselves for this. What is important is to simply be aware and heal it, heal it, heal it, let it go. Forgive yourself and let it go. Yeah. So, I'd like to move into key eye opener number 3. Unless anybody's got any questions or anything that's niggling, or any questions about a behavior that they may be displaying in their relationship and they're not sure whether it's victim or victor, which doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because if you're feeling that it's uncomfortable, if it's causing problems in your relationship, then it needs to be addressed. But sometimes it's just helpful to notice and be aware of where we're coming from. Anybody got any questions before I move into the nice part?
I just wanted to ask if, let's just say, for example, my ex, he's definitely a victim, but he might even think that he's a victor because of manipulation, because of his beliefs and whatever else, and obviously, yeah, it's just a charade or whatever it is that he's trying to portray. So, I mean, we're not even going to go down to that, mental health route, but it's the fact that kind of he probably believes that he is actually a victor. But everything that I've seen, how he's acting now, puts him in a victim, labeled as a victim.
Yes.
I just wonder, kind of your thoughts on that, if he actually thinks that he's a victor.
It's wonderful that you bring this up. Sometimes it's difficult for people to tell. He may not even be aware of these mindsets, but sometimes the victor masquerades a victim. Yeah, and vice versa. Yeah, and vice versa. So, for example, underneath my dad's victor, I would say that there is possibly some victim energy going on there, of being hard done by, in particular, for some reason, by women. I don't know, I'm only guessing here. Yeah. So there may be some victim undercurrents, yeah. But it may be a tendency for that person to just show up in the victor, yeah. So they do overlap, and I'm glad you've asked this question, Yan Chan, because they do overlap, yeah. Sometimes one behaves as the other, yeah. So is it important to know which? I don't think it is hugely important. It's nice so that we can just identify, yeah. And the reason I'm sharing it today is so that we can identify. Yeah, okay. But it's not about then moving into, look, you're the victim, because if we go there, then we're not really resolving anything. Yeah, it's just good to identify and just sort of move into the healing space as quickly as possible, because it doesn't feel comfortable. Neither of them are comfortable. Neither of them are true love, which is a much better place to be, and a deeply comfortable and peaceful place to be. Yeah? So yes, the victor can definitely masquerade a victim, or rather the victim can masquerade as a victor. It does happen, yeah. I hope that helps. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
So who can guess what the third V might be that I was teasing you with in the title of this topic? Victim or victor, or there's another place to go, and it's a V. I chose a word that begins with a V. I mean, as we'll see in a moment, it could be many other words. Love spelled the wrong way around. Vul. What could the other V be that just feels truer to who we are, right? Where we would rather go in our relationships. Terry?
Voyeur.
Which one? Why? Yeah, just stand back and just watch, right? Baharak says there's too many V words. There are a lot of V words. Voyeur is an interesting one, yes. Voyeur. I think I'd put the voyeur more in a sort of, I don't know, could be victim or victor, right? I'm looking for the word vulnerability, which if you look it up in the dictionary, doesn't bode well for most of us. Oh, it's like, it reads as, I can't remember it now because I didn't write it down, but it reads and speaks and has connotations of weakness, yeah, being open to the enemy, you know. But actually, true vulnerability is grace. It's actually utterly exquisite. It's beautiful. And it's when you're in that space of vulnerability that you are vibrating fully alive from your heart. And this is where, once we've healed our pain around that manifests maybe in victim behavior or victor behavior, I think we can go, yeah, and allow ourselves to just spend more time in that place of vulnerability. Yeah. Vulnerability is an invitation as well to the other to be vulnerable. When they see you in your vulnerability, they feel able to do the same. It's an unspoken invitation to the other to just soften up, let the guard down. Because as you rightly say, Yen Chan, the victim and the victor, they're kind of like masquerades of a whole bunch of stuff, layers and layers of stuff. But when we expose ourselves in total vulnerability, when we let the guard down, we're in our truth, straight up. Yeah. Vulnerability can only be accompanied by what? Which is what we're all looking for in a relationship. When we look for as a victim, we look for as a victor. But it's only really, truly there when you're in your total vulnerability. Strength. You cannot be truly vulnerable, truly, as the French say, à fleur de peau. It's a beautiful expression, which just means like, just exposed, gently exposed to the elements. We can't be like that. We can't allow ourselves to be like that unless we're in our strength, in our own healthy inner strength, in our own inner power. Not power over anyone or over anything or over a situation, just in a healthy, loving, self-loving and loving power. That's true vulnerability. I've got some words down here that describe the qualities of vulnerability, which I see in my husband, and sometimes I see in my dad and my mom and my daughter, and sometimes I display myself. We all go there at times, and that's the good news. What we want is to go there a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, until you're relating from this space all the time. That's when the magic happens. I've got words that describe vulnerability down here as softness. When I'm really soft with my husband, it feels so nice. I can just be my true self. I'm a soft kind of kid. I'm not the hard one. That's not who I am. He's actually having a relationship with a mask, an identity, as Baharak said earlier. Not the real me. The real me is kind of soft, easygoing. Another word that I put down here to describe the qualities of vulnerability, accepting. If I'm soft to everything, I'm not resistant to it. I'm not pushing it away from me or pretending it doesn't exist or anything like that. I'm soft. I'm okay with it. It is. It's happening. And I'm okay with it. You are and become much more able to be in vulnerability and much more able to be vulnerable, the more healing you do. The more you clear your pain, the more you soften up. I don't want to be brittle in my relationship. On the contrary, I want to be soft and gentle. And you can kind of see it in people's energy. There's people that I know that are very vulnerable, but they're deeply powerful as well because they're in their hearts. Heart is another word that I put down alongside vulnerability. I'm in my heart. They have a soft energy about them. They don't look threatening or scary or defenseless and sort of a bit victim-y. They're just soft. You know? To get there, we need to clear out all the pain. So there's work to be done, right? Vulnerable, open-hearted, sensitive. When you are vulnerable, you are truly sensitive to what's going on. The more you clear away the resistance, the brittleness, or the pushing away, the more present you can be with what really is. And to be present with what really is takes vulnerability. Just this softness. I put alongside vulnerability another word which I love, openness. I'm open to this, exactly as it is. It doesn't mean that you put up with abusive relationships or constant, damage from someone or that sort of thing. But I'm open to the reality that this exists. And it's in that openness and in that vulnerability that we have much greater clarity as to how to behave and what to do, what action to take, if any. When we're in the sort of resistant or the victim, the action that we are likely to take is from pain or fear. And it's not actually truthful, perhaps, to what's going on. It's more a defensive mechanism or a protective mechanism to keep us safe. When you're vulnerable, there's no need to keep me safe. When I'm vulnerable, I don't need to do anything or put anything in the way to stay safe, because precisely because I'm in my vulnerability, I feel safe. I feel safe enough to be vulnerable because I don't have the fears anymore. I've healed them. And I can be soft and open and powerful and clear and helpful because that's my truth. I've used the analogy of the horse. It struck me some years ago. I love horses, and I feel that the horse truly embodies vulnerability, perhaps better than any other creature that I know, outside of perhaps some, well, I'll share that later, actually, I'll share it later. The horse. Imagine a horse and notice its vulnerability. It's such a vulnerable creature. It's deeply alert. It's got its sensitivities, its heightened senses. It's vulnerable, right? It looks like it could get hurt really easily. And yet, the power of that creature is so, as well, so visible. Its strength, its presence. Vulnerability is also a presence. It's a presence of grace. And this is where I'd like to invite you to go. Instead of the victim or the controller or the victor, into the vulnerable one, the vulnerable you. It's a much more expansive place to be. And there's no masquerade there. And I'm glad you brought it up, Yin Chan, because there's no mask. But in order to do that, we can't go into vulnerability and sort of pretend if we're in fear or pain. It takes some healing. Vulnerability is truth. It's what opens up those truthful conversations that have no blame, that have no pointing fingers or judgment or control or my way or the highway or, I can't cope or I got this kind of attitudes. There's no attitude whatsoever in vulnerability. And when we conduct our relationships from this beautiful place, this softness, Number one, we're a lot more attractive. Trust me, it's a much, much more beautiful place to emanate from. Number two, it's a direct invitation for the other to be the same. They may be thrown a little bit to begin with, but just keep being vulnerable, keep being vulnerable, keep being open, keep being sensitive. And they will probably, likely, become that way too, without you having to expect or say or do anything. No need to control, no need to be the victor to get them to do that. That's going to fall flat on its face, right? We've been there before. But vulnerability, whew, stunning energy. And when I am vulnerable, things work. What I needed just shows up. Things just sort of fit into place much more easily. And there's a flow and an ease that happens. It eases the energy between you and your loved one because you've eased your energy within yourself. And they can feel it. And they will be much more likely to want to be around you. The horse, I was just wanting to share this last bit about vulnerability, has the ability to respond to a slightly threatening situation without any attack. The horse does not attack. It's not an attacking creature. It flees. It doesn't come in there all guns blazing. It's just not the nature of the horse. You know, it just removes itself. So if it needs to, it'll remove itself. We're not attacking anymore in our relationships. We're not fleeing, as victims either. If there's a need to remove ourselves from the space, we will. But it's in that vulnerability, in that alertness, that we have the clarity of what we need to do. Because we're right in it with ourselves. We are ourselves, our true selves, but totally vulnerable. Totally vulnerable. And we want to come back to that and relate from that. It takes some courage, yeah. It's, takes a bit of work. But when you behave like that, you'll enjoy your relationship so much more. And your loved ones will enjoy you so much more. And you will enjoy yourself so much more. You will fall in love with yourself all over again. Like, oh my God, this is who I really am. Wow, I love myself. It's like that. It's so nice. So the vulnerable mindset is quite different to the victim mindset or the victor mindset. It has a mindset that says things like, I am life. I am it all. When you're very vulnerable and soft and open, you don't feel separation anymore. You feel much more connected because you're open. And you start to experience yourself as it all. That's the mindset of the vulnerable. I am loved. No matter what is going on, no matter what my circumstances, no matter what people I've drawn into my life, I am loved. There's a recognition that this is all love. And love is my strength. The vulnerable mindset knows that love is my strength, not the victor or the victim, but that love is. Love is vulnerable. It's a beautiful, vulnerable energy. It just is. Like a flower. Imagine a flower, whatever flower, your favorite flower. That's love. Look how vulnerable a flower is. And yet look how powerful they are with their colors and how they attract the bees. It's the same kind of energy we're talking about. Vulnerable accepts things as perfect because they simply are happening. Whatever's happening is perfect because it's love, and I recognize it as love. Even if it's challenging, I see the gift in this. I see the opportunity in this to heal and come into more love and more vulnerability. It resists nothing. It resists nothing. There's no resistance in vulnerability, which is why it's soft. It just flows. It just flows everywhere, actually. There's no end to it. Vulnerability is, like I said earlier, we are one. When I know myself fully as you all and as one, it's a beautifully soft place to be. I can't know that if I've got the barriers up. I can't know myself as one with my husband if I've got the victor or the victim barriers up. The energy's in the way, there's blocks in the way, energetic blocks in the way. But if I soften into my heart, heal whatever's in the way, I can come into that vulnerable space and know great intimacy and bliss with my husband. I promise you I'm getting there, darling. I know the theory and I've done a lot of the practice and we're much better. Like I said earlier, we do experience this more and more and more. Yeah. So much love, right? If I'm vulnerable, when I'm vulnerable, I can love more freely. There's nothing in the way. The clouds have gone. Remember we used the analogy of the clouds. The clouds have gone. The sun is out. My heart is open. The clouds being the pain or the fear or the resistance or the blocks that we put in the way. They've gone. My heart is wide open. It is vulnerable, but it's beautiful. Love is vulnerable. The mindset of vulnerability is I accept this fully and I receive it fully. I see what there is in this for me in a healthy way in order for me to open my heart even more. Vulnerability understands that I'm getting what I need to grow and to enter into more love. Vulnerability is also, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's happening right now. Sometimes I have a little mantra that I say to myself is, I don't know what I am, I don't know who I am, and I don't know what or who I will be tomorrow. That's vulnerable. It dissolves the ego straight up. When you allow yourself to just not know. Truth is we don't know, but we try to sort of think that we do, right? And that's us in the victor. Oh, I don't know and I don't want to know. And, there's another kind of not knowing. Yeah, there's a bit more an egoic not knowing, which is more like the victim not knowing. Yeah. But there's I don't really know. That's soft and gentle and accepting and vulnerable. So this is where I'm inviting you to go in your relationships as often as possible. But to get there, how do we get there? Yeah. How do I do this? So before we go into how do I do this, would you like to just open up that nice list of things that you can say about yourself, moments when you are in your vulnerability? These will be moments when you're in your truth, when you're soft. There's no fight. You're at one with that person. Start that list off. It's important to acknowledge that we all go into those moments, and hopefully we'll do so more and more as we bring awareness to this. Moments of total openness, total acceptance. Not a hard kind of acceptance. Okay, I accept, okay, you have what you want, whatever. Not that kind of acceptance, but okay, I see. This is happening right now and I accept it fully. Start off that list for yourselves. And I'd like to invite you to continue it after the call or whenever you've got a free moment. Because you will find that there are moments when you are totally vulnerable. Yeah? Maybe more with some people than with others. Yeah? And just acknowledge them for yourself and notice what it feels like. And let's do the work to go there more often and relate eventually from total vulnerability. This is perfect because it is. That's vulnerable. I embrace this fully just as it is. There's no mask there. There's no energy that sort of popped up to protect anything. It's soft and it's beautiful. So how can we be vulnerable in our relationships is the big question, yeah. Well, we've already talked about some of the things that we can do. But I know that putting it into practice is easier said than done. And it takes time. It's taken me years. And I'm still not there yet, as I've already shared. You know, I have my moments when I lose the plot and go straight into victimhood. But it's in those moments when I'm in fear or just sucked into some really uncomfortable feeling. Instead of going into the victim in those moments or into the victor, where I need to go is to my breath, to just soften up again. So when you feel yourself hardening, yeah, or shying away and pushing someone out and shutting yourself down, just keep softening to what's really going on inside of you, which is where the pain is, yeah. Just observe it, notice what's going on, watch it like a divine mother would watch her child when they're in pain. Let it go with your breath. The more you heal, the stronger you are inside. And the more easily you'll be able to soften up. When you feel that you've got your inner strength on board, there's no need for any hardening. You can just be soft and vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you don't feel like you're going to be hurt. If you're in a place of vulnerability and you're sort of like on edge, you're probably more in the victim. Yeah. So just take a look at that again. Look at it. Okay, I'm feeling frightened here. Address the fear. Let it go. And you'll come back into that softer space. People will pick up on your energies. They do all the time. So the softer you are, the more able they will be and more comfortable and happier they'll be in your space. Yeah? And when you have your own inner strength on board, which is, I would say, synonymous with your own self-love on board, down goes the guard, out comes the vulnerability, out comes the flower. And then she can bloom and blossom. It sounds simple. I know it's a journey. It is a journey. Use your relationships and the signposts in your relationships. Those moments with this awareness, I'm in the victim. I'm in the victor. I must be in pain somewhere. Sometimes we don't notice our pain when we're in the victor, but if you have the ability to know that you're in the victor, then you can move into the pain and just let it go. I can see my husband looking at his watch because I know that he's conscious that I've got to go and pick up my daughter shortly. So I'm going to begin to wrap this up. Has anybody got any quick questions that they've got burning that I can help you with right now? I've got another 15 minutes with you before I have to hop in the car. All good from Baharat, lovely. Yeah. Do you feel willing and open to be vulnerable? Does that feel like a nice place for you to go, or you're not sure about it?
I just want to share something, if I may. I found when I first started becoming more vulnerable and okay with it, it was the one time I learned the most. Not just about myself, but about everything from the situation I was in, because it broke down the barriers to the ego, which was blocking me accepting information, experiences from the outside. So it's really powerful.
Yes, it does. That's lovely. Terry's described in a way energetically what I'm talking about as an invitation. The barriers go down between you and the other, and you get to see clearly. And when the barriers are down, that's like an invitation. It's an energetic invitation for the other's barriers to go down as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful, and a leader kind of way to be in a relationship. Not a leader as in, I'm leading the way, I got this, but an invitation. I prefer that word. It's a beautiful invitation, yeah, because the barriers come down, the energy opens up. Yes, Baharak.
I wasn't even sure if I was going to say anything, but no, I had like the most. I mean, they even called it one of their most intimate, like non-physical relationships, like the most open conversation, the most vulnerability I've had, and every time it was never enough. They were always like, I need more. I need you to tell me more. I need you to be more vulnerable, and I'd always be more vulnerable. I mean, unfortunately, it didn't end well. So, and that's quite recent, and I'm just like, it's a whole jinx thing. But no, but it does make me, it's a sore point for me to get over a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. Just
I don't even know why they needed it, and then at the end they said, I mean, they were angry, and I still don't know why. There's something more to this, that I'm probably not knowing. But then they were like, your vulnerability is out of need. And I was like, no, you kept asking me. It's got nothing to do with needs. And anyway, but yeah.
When we sink into vulnerability and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, it's not for anyone. We're not doing it for anyone. We're doing this because it feels good to me.
Yeah, it got to the point where it was like, at first it was for them. But as I healed and I grew, and because at the end of the day, I started in a very vulnerable place anyway, because my mum had died and several of my family had died. So I was like, I didn't have anyone to be vulnerable with. So, I was like, like doing it for them, because it was finally, somebody to be, vulnerable with. And then it was like, but then I started growing and healing, and then I was like, I'm doing this for me now, right? And so then it started becoming like a too easy a place to go when anything happened, or anything I felt, or any little thought I had. So yeah, thank God for these workshops.
Yes, I think it's important to bring attention, and you've already brought attention to this already, this dynamic. The vulnerability that I'm talking about is just a softening that happens within. Ooh, there goes my alarm. A softening that happens within. Not for you that I'm doing this. That's slightly erring on the victim, I would say.
Yeah.
Slightly. There's a vulnerability that is sort of, oh, look, I'm going to just sort of, open heart, be all raw and truthful and everything. But are you doing that from a place of total sort of inner strength and self-love and no pain and no fear? Or are you doing that for a specific reaction and response? If there's an agenda, then you can be clear that it's not actually total vulnerability as I'm talking about it. It's perhaps more of a need.
No, I think it totally evolved. Like, that's meditation for you. I was doing daily meditation for 20 minutes silent. First 2 years was all about need. I agree that it was about need, but it evolved. You start seeing yourself. You just hearing yourself more, and you don't even need to hear it recorded back. You can just hear yourself, and I just started to see, no, hold on. And because they also had a point of like telling me I need to be more vulnerable, and at first I was like doing it, like a little puppy, but then I started realizing, no, I do what I want to do, and it started to change. The dynamic started to change, and yeah. But
it seems to me a little bit like there was more like a sort of victor-victim thing going on. Him sort of like, you've got to do this. He's in the victor, you're in the victim, and it's a little bit like that. And it's trying to evolve from this place.
yeah.
But what if you just go, drop that space, yeah? And maybe have a look at Baharak. I would suggest just have a look at the sort of pain that maybe underneath that, yeah? Have a look at, when perhaps you can cast your mind back to when you were being like a little puppy going into vulnerability. It's like a little puppy doing the right thing because I want to please you, yeah? Not quite vulnerability, I would say. Vulnerability comes automatically. It's not something we can try to do, yeah? You can't do vulnerability. You are vulnerable. It's a state of being. So all we can do is get what's in the way, It's who you really are. You're bringing me to my final point, really. It's who we really are. Yeah. I'm always calling you back to who you really are in these calls. I'm never asking you to do anything outside of that. What's outside of that is what we're trying to keep outside the pot of our relationship. It's what we're trying to remove from our relationships and heal. Yeah.
I
So
think I think it's really evolved because I see my conversations now with other people so different and so much more. It's like it's like you say, a softer vulnerability. It's not.
yes.
I never, I'm looking for what's the audience going to say to this. It's like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
just
So
me.
if you're in vulnerability and you're feeling a lot of fear whilst you're in vulnerability, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So you can see, I think you've had your journey, so you can see the difference between one and the other. Yeah. I'm not talking about total exposure to the enemy, which is what it says in the dictionary. I'm talking about so much self-love. I've done so much healing on myself. I've cleared so much of my fear and my pain that, you know what? I can relax. I can be soft and open and truthful because I'm not so attached to how they're going to respond. Because I love myself so much that I have it all. I have everything I need on board. It's a journey, like I say, it's a journey. Yeah. So I'm going to recap. Thank you for your beautiful, vulnerable sharing. You're being it right now. Do you see how beautiful that is, Baharak? You're embodying vulnerability so beautifully right now. You didn't expect anything from me, did you? Or from anybody else on the call. You were just sharing. That's what I'm talking about. Yay! Just to recap then, before I sign off. The victim behavior, we've already talked about this, is the powerlessness, the helplessness, the behavior from fear. Yeah. It's a masquerade, as Yen Chan said. Yeah. What's underneath needs to be healed. The victor is kind of like the direct opposite is, I got power over this. I got the power. I think of it like that. But actually, the truth is that underneath it, they clearly ain't got the power, because that's not the kind of power we're talking about today. The power we're talking about today is inner strength. It's unlimited. And it doesn't need to have power over anybody or anyone or anything. It just is beautifully powerful. That's all. Gorgeous. And your vulnerability is your strength. It's your truth. Contrary to what it says in the dictionary, it is actually your strength. I'm talking about your heart. Your heart is vulnerable. But that is its strength. So I'd like to invite you all to keep on keeping on. Yeah. Keep on going back to the drawing board. I still do this every single day of my life. Yeah. To just keep on healing what's in the way of total vulnerability. And as I kind of touched on earlier, I shared my secret a little bit too soon. I let it out. My little truth that I always end these workshops with, or these sessions with. Vulnerability is your true nature. We are born vulnerable, right? We are born totally vulnerable. And you look at an infant, look at how their energy just is soft and emanates and radiates. That's our essence. Our essence is just so soft and vulnerable. It's light. That's our nature. So all I'm doing is I'm just calling you back to you. Where else to go, right? Where else to go? The choice is yours. But what I'm doing with these workshops is bringing awareness to where we are not being ourselves. I'm in the victim. I'm in the victor. I'm in pain. I must be in pain. I must be in fear. I'm going to do some healing. In that very act of self-healing, you are already loving yourself so much more. It's an act of self-love. And that in itself is empowering and allowing you to just let all that sort of hardened shell around you down so that you can be that beautiful flower and shine on bright. And bless us with your beauty. We need you. I need you to be vulnerable. just as you need me to be vulnerable, so that I can see who you really are, so that I can enjoy you in all your glory, in your true, exposed, gracious beauty. The real you. That's where we're headed. So keep on keeping on. I love you so much. Is everybody good to go towards vulnerability? To keep on keeping on until we're so vulnerable, we're just all one together? What a great place to be, right? There's a big yes from Yin Chen. Me too. 100%, 100,000,000%. I wouldn't give it up for anything. Because I know that that pot at the end of the rainbow is glorious. I'm still journeying, like all of us. But we'll get there. We do get there. You will get there. Thank you so much for joining. Bless you all.